Hello and welcome to the 7th NixOS office hours. These office hours happen every other Friday at 3 p.m. American New York time, which is 1900 UTC. I think the next one will be a slightly different time depending on where you are due to daylight savings time. At any rate, they are recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So if you miss it for the time change, you can catch it up later.
If you have a question, please be sure to use the Zoom hand feature so we can give you voice to raise your hand to talk. And if you're not sure how to use the Zoom hand feature, it is in the doc that we've linked into the call. And Graham will also post a link to this in IRC and the Zoom chat. And I think Graham will be looking in IRC on the NixOS Office Hours channel for questions as well. So just some groundwork before we do start the call is that we do have a code of conduct, and it's the contributor covenant. And I'll actually link the TLDR for what is expected of our participants into IRC.
Today we have Samuel Leathers, the release manager for NixOS 1909, codenamed Lori. Samuel co-managed this release with Linus Heckman, who we unfortunately couldn't get to come today, but we are glad to have Samuel today.
So Samuel, I know it's quite a difficult decision, for especially the time management pieces to be a release manager for NixOS, especially when it's such like a big project like this that's so active and so many issues and pull requests to sort through to decide what's going to be part of the release. So how did that feel for you to make that decision? What inspired you to actually choose to do this?
Well, it was something I wanted to do since the first NixCon I went to. And I didn't really have the opportunity until this time. It was a little difficult of a decision to make this time because my wife and I had another baby in June, which was like right in the heart of the release cycle. But the opportunity arose for it, and someone needed to step up, and I stood up, and I wasn't as active as I would have liked to be as a release manager, and hopefully with this next release I can be a little bit more active with it. But it's an exciting experience, and I highly recommend anyone involved in the Nix community try it at least once.
Excellent. So I did notice that for a lot of release managers, it is quite a process that no one has stepped up to make this commitment to do this role. But eventually, since no one's actually decided, someone comes forward with the commitment to assume the responsibility. It would be nice if we could sort of like organize in such a way that it's easier for the time management pieces, because it's not exactly like it needs to be like extremely sort of intensive activity to pay attention to. If we sort of meet together, it might even be a bit easier, like regularly every week release managers with Elko, just to discuss how the release is going. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely would be good to have a little bit more structure and a little bit more documentation on what needs done, because a lot of it was looking at Git histories of what previous release managers had done and trying to mimic it. And there's the release documentation in the NixOS manual, but some of that stuff is outdated. It's on my backlog of trying to get that stuff updated. And whoever steps up to be the next release manager with me, I'm sure will be helping a lot with the brunt of that task, making sure that we get everything well documented with it. As well as like the process of like going through milestones and whatnot. We probably need to define what should actually be included in a milestone and what shouldn't, because sometimes just like everyone tags every issue as this is important for this release and whatnot. And then when the release comes about, there's 100 some open milestone issues that haven't been addressed yet. And it's like, oh, well, I guess we're just not doing those this release. So, I mean, it would be good to have more of a process of how we require something to be for a milestone, and at what point do we just start moving issues to the next milestone or removing them completely from the milestone during the release process.
Exactly. It seems like it's just determined by anyone, and really that should be a determination that's made between the release manager and Elko, correct? I did notice towards like during the end of
I agree.
For zero hydro failure that it's pretty much any ticket that needed to be like in 1909 got added to the milestone. Just as an approval for a backport, which was kind of silly. So we definitely need to get sort
Yeah,
of like a roadmap and
yeah,
a decision that what is actually something that is critical to 1909 and what isn't critical to the release. Sort of like a
right.
base release
And the
requirements.
process for backporting too.
Oh,
Sorry.
So, Samuel, what would you say is the biggest part about managing the release? What was the biggest investment of your time and stress?
Oh, probably going through all the issues and identifying which ones needed to be addressed and which ones didn't. I would say that's definitely was one of the hardest parts of it, trying to filter out through the number of pull requests and issues which ones we deal with.
And do you have a criteria in mind while you're doing that, or I mean, or is it just a gut feeling?
It was very much a gut feeling. There wasn't really much recorded into how to actually determine exactly which ones were important for the release and which ones weren't.
Cool. What did it feel like there were a lot of things that were just on you to do? Like, was there too much? Was it a good amount of work? Can you tell me about that?
Well, Linus took a huge chunk of it, and part of that was because I had a new baby around, and so I didn't have nearly as much time to dedicate to it as I wanted to. Um, but yeah, I mean, it felt like there was a significant amount of work, and there's probably a lot more work we could have done that didn't get done too.
I have heard through the Office Hours IRC channel that IRC user TANEB, Taneb maybe, is interested in
Paneb.
being a future release manager.
Oh, nice! It's great to have people volunteering. I mean, that's awesome that we have volunteers instead of it's like last minute. Okay, who can do it?
One thing that spooks me about release management is the zero Hydra failures, and you get pretty close to the end, and there's this huge list of failing builds. What what do you do from there? I mean, what's it feel like to have that huge list in front of you and just trying to get it worked through?
So what our approach was basically just like they would be absolutely critical to get. And there were in the list that we, and there was
It seems we've lost Samuel.
Yeah, it seems he's completely cut out.
Oh dear. I wonder if his Wi-Fi was bandwidth limited.
Yeah, it did seem some sort of bandwidth problem was occurring.
Yeah. All right. I will ping him on IRC and see if I can get him.
Okay. Meanwhile, I did want to share something shortly. I did put it in NixOS office hours is that Fedora actually has like a basic release criteria, like sort of like a criterion in what needs to be I think working for release to be made. So like they'll make an extension to the release if one of these things are not met, which I would think the tested job set would be this, but that requires a test to be written for sort of every single component, which is kind of silly. So maybe having some sort of documentation like that would actually help us make this decision when it's like when for example, 2003 would be ready.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I would like to work on is exactly this. What does it mean to have a stable release? Right now, it means the tested job set passes, but I think as we mature and as we grow as a community, we have some real opportunity to do better, to push to be better, and to come off as a more professional project each time.
Exactly. So I think like having almost a checklist like that to help the release manager know, so when they can look around and do their rounds to figure out when the release is ready, it would be the sort of criterion that they can look at. So that's basically a documentation idea that possibly a future release manager could produce.
Browsing through this list of the Fedora basic release criteria, under system login, it says, what do you mean by work-in? It's pretty fun. All right, well, I don't see any replies from Samuel on IRC or on Zoom. Maybe we should switch over to reviewing a pull request, or perhaps there are some questions people have gathered from that short time with Sam.
Exactly. Does anyone have any questions about being a release manager in the future, releasing NixOS, or some hiccups they had during release management that you think could have been handled better? Give that about 30 seconds.
I'm not seeing any hands. Or
Oh.
Addis Blattis on IRC has the question of how much work in terms of hours per week it is to be a release manager. Honestly, I don't know. World of Peace, do you have any feel for that?
Yeah, I observe people very intensively. So,
Hello.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yay, we can hear you. You're here.
Perfect. And you can actually answer this question that I was just asking.
Just in time.
The question was
You're
from
going to have to ask it to Glenn.
The question is from Addis Blattis, and it was, how much work in terms of hours per week was it to be a release manager?
I had anticipated it was going to be around 8 hours a week. I was not able to put in quite that 8 hours a week, and I probably put in closer to like 4 to 6 and whatnot. But I definitely, without Linus taking off the bulk of the workload and whatnot, I definitely would have needed at least 8 hours a week, I think, for it.
All right. And actually, we might have overlooked something, is that it's not necessarily just how much work it is for an hours a week for one release manager. We have actually 2 release managers co-managing a release.
Right.
So
right.
it's actually, so if you are choosing to be release manager, you're not going to be completely alone in this task. You will have your co-release manager to help you, hopefully.
Yes.
I do gather it does essentially require having a job that lets you do some of it at work. Samuel, were you able to do some of it during your time at IOHK?
I was able to do some of it. I was able to do some of it during work hours, but it was not like I couldn't dedicate a whole lot of time to it. I had too many other work responsibilities. Even if they would have given me more hours I could have done at work, I just had too much stuff going on at work to really not just have it be outside of work hours.
Sure. So one thing that I wonder about is, are there ways that we could change the process of contributing to make release management time easier? For example, something that we check on each pull request, or like more paying attention to updating documentation, something to reduce the load when we're trying to make a release.
That's a really good question.
Oh, it seems you've muted. Still seems you're muted. And actually, I'm seeing not the normal mute icon, but like a phone with a scratch through. I'm not sure what that means, but it's different from everybody else's mute icon.
Yeah, correct. I was just trying to unmute him and it was not working. Sending messages. I think we're here again. Oh, no.
Testing.
Yes,
There
we
you
can hear
are.
you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep the video off because I think that's what's kicking me out here. Sorry, guys.
Okay, Graham, do you think you could reiterate your question? Or
Sure.
transliterate?
Yeah, in what ways could we change the process of contribution to make it easier to issue a release every 6 months?
That's a really good question. I think the contribution leading up to the freeze is fine, because everything just goes into master, and then you cut off a master and you have it. It's from the freeze till the end where it tends to be the most complex, because you kind of have to make sure issues are getting backported and whatnot. And maybe if we could automate the backports in some way, like have some kind of bot that can, you tag something as needing a backport, and if there's no merge conflicts, the bot automatically does that and gets it into Hydra so it builds. That might be something that would help a whole lot.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. Another idea that was brought up on the IRC channel was basically for every single pull request, evaluating if it needs release notes, making sure they're written in that pull request.
Oh, that's a great idea, actually. That's absolutely a great idea. That would be a fun one to automate. How do you determine what needs a release note and what doesn't? I guess any breaking change in a NixOS option or something would definitely need a release note.
Do you think the role of release manager could be broken up a bit into a team? And if so, what sort of teams do you think there could be?
I think it could definitely be broken up a little bit more. The biggest problem we have, though, is getting 2 is hard enough. If we increase that to a team of like 6, even if there's less work for each of the members, it might be still harder to get people to actually volunteer to get all those spots filled. To break it into a team, I would say maybe you could have 1 or 2 people that are basically just responsible for keeping an eye and on the issues and pull requests and triaging them. 1 person responsible for making sure things get backported when backport is needed during the freeze to the release point. And also with backporting the stuff to stable going after that. And then a 3rd person might be, well, a 3rd role, I should say, not person, because some of these you'd probably want 2 people or so doing. But the 3rd one would be more of like an architecture position, that basically someone that does planning of like big things that need to be done. So like if we're going to change the entire networking infrastructure or something in a release, actually planning what that looks like and what done is considered. Because sometimes the hardest thing is knowing when something's half done or actually done and whatnot, and how to actually get that to completion.
Exactly. And I think like we do have a NixOS backports team, correct? And I'm pretty sure the people on that team should be particularly familiar in their expertise to performing backports, and they're supposed to be pinged to perform them or at least review them. So I think perhaps the issue is just that maybe it's not a release team, it's just that the development needs to be sort of communicated of who is responsible for what and how to contact them and what group they're in, because it can be kind of difficult to figure that out sometimes. For example, as you said, like who's responsible for the networking stack, and if there's a feature that needs to be merged in, how do we coordinate that, and who people are responsible for that, have the expertise to understand those changes. Would you agree that this breaking up Nix packages into groups of people clearly defined would help release management, at least as far as communication with the release manager?
Yeah, I think it would.
Cool. I think that would be really interesting, especially as I was saying earlier about these basic release criteria, is trying to make NixOS better and better, and keep things of very high quality. I think having some communities call them working groups who focus on specific use cases or specific parts of the operating system. I think that'd be an interesting collaboration with the release manager.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would.
I'm taking notes, by the way, because this is really valuable information. So Sam, would you do it again?
I'd absolutely do it again. Hopefully when my kids are a little older and I have a little more time to dedicate to it.
That's true. Your family should definitely come first. Yeah, we'll keep you in mind when in a few years down the line. Maybe 2503.
2503.
I'm not even sure how the release numbers are formatted.
Sure. So the first two digits, 19 is the year, and then the second two is the month.
Oh, we do dates and only on the 3rd month and the 9th.
Yeah, and so that actually leads me into my next question is, Samuel, every release I'm aware of has come out the month after the month it was advertised for. So like 1909 came out in October, 1903 came out in April. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I love this question.
Yeah, so this was actually my fault this time. We did not intend to do it this way this time. And the main issue was I announced the freeze date. So I went on vacation like last week of August and whatnot, and Linus was trying to get a hold of me to announce the freeze date. And then when I got back on vacation, I was like, okay, let's announce the freeze date. And we talked to some people, and some people were saying that basically, well, if we announce the freeze date that soon, it's not going to be enough time for people to get stuff in. So we pushed the freeze date out a little bit, and it's like, oh, we can just catch up the slack and actually still get it released. And still just be the last week of September instead of maybe the second to last week or whatnot. And then there were some zero Hydra failures. There were a few that were considered critical that needed to be dealt with. There was going through, there was still about 500 failures or so we had to go through after we were like, okay, that's enough VHF to tackle this one around, and then we had to go through and mark a number of those broken. So it took a little longer than we wanted. Hydra took a long time to build some things. So I mean, just a whole bunch of different things coming together, but it all kicked off with me just not being available when I was on vacation.
Well, you have there's a long history of doing exactly that. So you're not alone, and I wouldn't even say it's your fault. I think it's, even though you are a release manager, it's really a community effort, and we're doing the best we can with the people and time we have.
And again, the documentation process of like what pieces actually need to be done ahead of time, and like marking like this has to be done by this date, this has to be done by this date leading up to it, would definitely help with locking that down to maybe actually getting a release in the month that it's supposed to be in.
Sure. I've definitely wondered about somebody whose only job is to watch the calendar and remind us when these important dates are coming up.
It sounds like that's a perfect job for a bot, doesn't it?
It very well might.
Particularly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Computers do these things so much better than people.
So EDEF on the Office Hours channel is talking about a larger project, for example, going to Wayland by default, now that Red Hat is dropping their efforts to support X11. And how that in particular would be a much larger project than a single release manager could reasonably sustain.
Yeah, I think for something like that, you would actually have to nominate probably a core of at least 3 people to tackle that architecture of that and basically tracking of the implementation of that. So we'd have to have some processes, we'd have to have some people volunteer to actually pick that up. There's no way the release manager would be able to do that by themselves and whatnot. It would have to be a huge community effort, and we'd probably need to put a lot more structure into the release to actually make that happen.
Exactly. So it'd sort of be like a call to the desktop maintainers in Nix packages that their expertise is required for this task, and we do need it for the release. So if they could volunteer, that would be great. Great. Something
Yep.
like that, at least.
And yeah, I don't know how a lot of people would feel about like completely getting rid of X11, because a lot of people still use window managers that haven't been ported this way, or haven't been ported to Wayland and whatnot. I know like i3 US Sway, that's the one I'm using and whatnot, but like people using like DWM and Xmonad, I mean, there's still a lot of people out there like that, and I don't think there's any equivalent of that on the Wayland side.
That's true. And I can tell you from experience, Sway works generally much better than X11 in every way in which it does. And there are many ways in which it doesn't. For example, Zoom has surprising support. Screen sharing has surprising levels of support. It's definitely still a growing platform.
Oh, absolutely. It's my primary thing on my laptop, so I'm pretty familiar with Sway.
Very cool. All right, World of Peace. Do you have any further questions? I'm starting to run out of things to ask about.
Sorry. There was a delay. What was the question?
Do you have any further questions for Samuel here about release management?
Not particularly on that regard. I will say in the previous thing that we were talking about, when it came to having certain maintainers of a subsystem step up. So like, for example, for 1903, we needed to update, I think it was XFCE to its latest revision. And the particular maintainer of that packages subset was unresponsive. And I think it was Volf who brought that to my attention. So I did actually have to pick up maintaining that, provisionally maintaining that package set, which is a bit of something I can't really do completely because I already maintain several too many package sets in Nix packages. So in a situation like that, I'm not sure what to do in the future.
Yeah, but that's typical of NixOS and Nix PKGs. I mean, you have people coming, you have people going, some people more active in some parts of their lives and getting less active in other parts of their lives. I mean, I think we just need to encourage people when they start giving some interest into like, how can I get more involved and whatnot? Well, oh, you're interested in desktop management, maybe, and maybe what it is having, rather than just having a list of maintainers in the package, maybe having some sort of like monthly or quarterly meeting of people that are interested in this, especially for the bigger packages. For the smaller packages, it wouldn't make sense. But for something like XFCE and whatnot, have a quarterly meeting where anyone that's interested in the XFCE, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ecosystem?
The ecosystem, that's it. Could basically join a quarterly NixOS meeting on, okay, what do we want to do with it with these upcoming releases? Where do we want to go with this? And kind of encourage more community input instead of people just getting notified when their package they're maintaining is broken and fixing it and whatnot. Maybe being a little more proactive in it might get people much more excited about maintaining it.
Exactly. That would be almost like a release management meeting.
Yeah.
I think that is a
So maybe you
cool
have
idea.
these little release managers for different parts of the ecosystem.
Exactly. A release manager can't be fully responsible for these things. They just need to ensure that everything is coordinated properly. So they're actually responsible for that subsystem, and they just act as liaison communicating with them.
Right.
Graham, I think you had a question there.
Well, it just struck me that, and I remain sensitive to the idea of making Zoom too important in the NixOS community, but perhaps that could be a topic for a future office hours, is having people come and talk about what they're hoping to land in the next release.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
I think that's definitely needed.
All right, very cool. Well, we will definitely, I'll put that down in my notes here, and we will find a way to make that happen.
And then if you don't have anything else, some closing comments. As was mentioned earlier, we are looking for people to volunteer for the position of the second release manager for 2003. If that's something you're interested in, please ping me on IRC. I know a few people in the meeting said they might be interested in it. So ping me, let me know why you want to do it and what kind of time commitment you can give to it. And we'll take that under consideration. And I'll be floored if I get like 20 people pinging me and I have to choose someone, but that's not typically how it works. So we'll see what happens here.
Exactly.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much, Sam, for coming in today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving merrily along. I think we're going to move on to PR review. Is that correct, Graham?
Yeah, sounds good. Are you thinking you will do a review like you did a couple weeks ago?
Sure. I just need a PR. Or if anyone has any questions that they would like to speak up on the current topic already, I do see there's a lot of activity in the NixOS Office Hours channel.
From what I can tell, a lot of the conversation is around subgroups and not necessarily questions.
Okay, so it's just something we should incorporate into the notes from this nice meet that we've had. Okay, just need to find a PR and I will screen share.
I don't have a pull request for you to do a review on exactly. I do have a pull request here. I believe Anders brought it up. Aaron, talking about teaching the NixOS module options to do user management, more user management and more database management. And that's something we could talk about, or we could find just any old PR off the top and do a quick review.
Did he want to talk about that? I do believe he said he wanted to talk about that particular topic, but he wasn't sure because if it was going to be a topic that was going to stir any attention.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's a very interesting topic. He is on the call. Maybe Aaron would like to join, start talking.
Would you like to spotlight what you've been working on or what you'd like to talk about this moment?
Maybe we could do a quick pull request review, and then his microphone doesn't work at the moment. So why don't you do a pull request review, and I'll in the background try and sort something out about this pull request from Aaron.
Okay.
So, hi guys, I'm new here. This is my first time on the call, so apologize if I'm butting in here. But I have a pull request that has to do with node packages in Nix PKGs. And I'm offering that as a potential review to look at.
Exactly. Thank you. Could you post the link in IRC or Zoom chat? I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, here, I'll do it in the Zoom chat.
Wonderful. Is your name Joseph? I looked you up on GitHub.
Yes, it is. JG Lukasic.
Wonderful. Welcome to NixOS Office Hours, Joseph. Glad to have you here.
One second.
I believe Alice Blottis found it. Is it node packages Carto init at 1.20?
Yes, it is. And just added it to the Zoom chat.
Okay, thank you. I found it.
So kind of a higher level question here is just wondering how node packaging works in general. So I went through and followed the stuff in the documentation, and you run this generate script, but I was a little confused because it seems to like bump all of the Nix packages up to the most recent version. And this introduced some issues in this pull request here because it broke this other unrelated Nix package because it depended on this other node package that got automatically bumped when I added mine.
Okay, you can see my screen, correct?
Yes, I can.
So I can speak up about this because I've done a fair bit of node maintainership.
Oh, thank you, because I actually don't know much about node maintainership, other than that when the large set of packages gets regenerated, it should be in a separate commit and just emerge as quickly as possible. Okay.
So indeed, it's we always regenerate the whole package set. So you have done the correct thing by adding the package to the JSON list and then regenerate the whole set. That's the correct workflow.
Okay, they did say that it unintentionally broke things in the process of updating the node package set. Are we just supposed to merge that?
No, so this is a bit tricky. So these pull requests, they need to be merged fast or they go stale. And you need to, so as someone who does these pull requests, you need to be quite like pushing for it. Otherwise it's going to go stale and you're going to get merge conflicts and things very quickly. Or
Yeah, I see the merge conflict here.
Keep regenerating this like every few days or so. Otherwise you're going to get merge conflicts.
Now I know Haskell package set gets automatically regenerated and pushed in a separate branch.
Yeah, that process is very different though, because we don't maintain a list of packages somewhere that we generate from. We just take all of package and all of stack.
Oh, exactly. It's not necessarily fundamentally the same.
We don't do that with node packages. We just take the leaves that we want and then generate what we need from there.
So I have a question here related to pinning these packages though, because the package that was causing an issue, I dug into it and found out that in the latest release it had some breaking change. So then I pinned it to its current version so that it would not be automatically bumped when I ran that generate script. But it doesn't seem like many other node packages are using this like pinning mechanism. So I'm wondering, like, is this have other node packages needed to be pinned to older versions in the past?
I can't answer that. I don't know. It's not typical, definitely not. We don't want to do it if we can avoid it, because we want to move with the ecosystem.
Yeah, particularly there in that default v10.nix, I feel like that line's a little bit hacky there.
Yeah, what do I do with a pin in the future?
Yeah.
Should this be removed in the future, or is it just going to be regenerated whenever someone chooses to unpin it?
So yeah, so only version 109 of 3.js has this issue. So I'm assuming 110 is going to work. So it's also weird, like there's no way to kind of add a note that like, eventually in the future you can get rid of this pin.
So what's the problem in 109? Could you apply a patch? So if you
yes, you probably could. So
that would be preferable over pinning then. Because also we would notice when the patch doesn't apply anymore. So
yeah. Could you point me in the direction of like where that patch would be applied?
For sure. Are you on IRC?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So I'm relatively new to this.
Okay. Anyway, so where you do the override, you could also do an override after and apply patches. I will make a comment on your pull request.
Okay, yes. It seems you requested changes for me here.
Yeah.
Okay, I see there's conflicts. So what do I do with this conflicts? Do I rebase the PR and then regenerate the package set separately?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'll try to do this. Can you see my terminal?
No, I see your browser.
Oh, okay. I think I might need to adjust the share. One moment, please. Okay, I have to stop it. Sorry. There we go. Properly sharing now, are we?
Yep, I can see it now.
So I believe you regenerated in this commit?
Actually, yes, I did.
Okay, so I don't actually know how to do anything in Node. I don't review much of the pull request, which is probably part of the problem because they get stale.
Please.
What was that?
Would you be, how about we have Addis Blattis share his screen and do a review there?
Exactly. I think it would be helpful because I don't think a lot of maintainers actually know how to handle.
Actually, I can't right now because my Zoom is running in a separate X session for Zoom reasons.
For Zoom reasons, correct.
Understood. Me too. Well, maybe since there are some questions on that, we should take that one offline and have Addis Blattis do that review and suggest a patch.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll assign myself to that pull request and make sure it's well taken care of.
Wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you, Joseph, for bringing that pull request. I'm sorry we couldn't do a review here, but we'll get that reviewed quickly.
Oh no, totally fine. Yeah, thanks for looking at it.
Yeah, thanks for coming. World of Peace, I have 2 pull requests from
Oh.
EDEF.
Okay, it's these right here. 71334.
Yep, and then 71339. I just shared them in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to start again. So, oh, okay, handle multiple XDG data, configure elements correctly. So this is probably perfect for me to review because this is literally all I do usually. Is just have to mess with these funky little environment variables for free desktop. So this is just a patch, right? And there's this. So usually when there's some arbitrary patch being applied to
Yep.
a pull request like this, it's helpful if there's a comment to actually why it's there. So I do see she linked the pull request that she has. And it's a downstream patch apparently. So I would just request if she could just put this in the comment just so I can understand why this downstream patch is even here. And I do prefer if each comment is per block on the level of the patch instead of externally out here. So in case it expands, you don't have to like waste your time and reorganize that. Watching me struggle to type here. Other than that, I just need to see if it builds, and I guess it might be my responsibility to review the patch too, since we're just pulling in some sort of arbitrary patch.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure if it was like we've had some arguments in the past over when it's appropriate to include stuff in tree. This is like the pull request to upstream is like specifically written for mixed patches, but or well, it's a bug that's specifically relevant to.
Right. So I'm pretty sure any program should be able to handle multiple multiple values in XG configure separated by the colon, correct? And it's not it just wants it's only handling as a single element, right?
Right, yeah, so the configures variable should support multiple entries separated by colons.
Correct. Edith, could you oh, I guess she has an audio delay. So I guess I actually have to review the patch, and I actually really don't really play with C that much. So I won't be that great helpful look at it, so I can at least read it. It seems fine and just C. Did anyone see any problems there? Any C experts?
Not me. Just so you know, we are probably going to run a couple minutes late as it's 44 minutes past now.
Oh, okay. And I guess I just have to build the package. And this is just i3 blocks. So there's also this pull request, which is clean up Git series packaging and to use OpenSSL 1.1
How about
and
we?
motivate.
I'm a little concerned about starting a second one when we're so short on time.
Oh, now you're seeing actually higher review pull requests, which is about 20 all at once. Okay, I guess I'll just remain on this one. So a simple test here is just I guess load a configuration from i3 blocks with multiple values inside the xg configure environment variable, aside from building it. Does it have a help? Okay. So I believe it just wants to load the i3 blocks config. I'm not sure how I can get my environment correct to test this. Like maybe I can make like a temporary directory. No, not that. Might look at strace. That might be good. Oh, you already debugged it? So you've tested the patch properly. This is probably not necessary for me to do it then. So I'll just probably merge this once you add the comment here. And as always, make sure to have your sparkles there.
All right, looks
Okay.
good.
Yes, Symphonist still sparkles always. Always. I'm putting glitter on everything. Everything is going to be completely covered in glitter this release. Everything. So this is to clean up the Git series packaging to use fewer vendor dependencies and minimally upgrade some of the cargo dependencies to allow using recent versions of OpenSSL. Yes, simply for the sparkles. It's karma forever. So since there's a lot of commits in this, I like to look at it commit by commit. And this is to use cargo patches rather than cargo depth hook. What you should use is probably expression predated when cargo patches was added. And this is a patch that's allowed to use a newer version of OpenSSL, which probably got pinned when we bumped it. And we shouldn't use vendor libraries ever. Please don't.
Yeah, it still uses vendor libssh and stuff, but I figured I'd start somewhere, and this fixed an actual segfault I was encountering.
Exactly. I'm actually checking. You said which library was still vendored?
I think libssh2. I need to dig further into how that's packaged on the Rust end.
Might want to not sure if you want to open like a to-do for that, or like not a to-do, or a to-do in the expression, or like an issue just to continue that, just so you can make sure it gets finished, or if someone wants to complete it properly.
Hey, World of Peace.
Yes.
I have a personal to do for that right now.
Oh, okay. Yes, Graham.
I'm thinking we might want to hold this one for the next office hours or merge it before then.
Okay.
But it's a bit of a complicated pull request, and we are a bit over time at this point.
Oh, okay.
Is
I've
that,
stopped my share.
is that okay, Edith?
I can live with that.
I'll definitely review it afterwards.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll actually just I'll check your authors, search and pull requests, and just try to review all the pull requests you submitted.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right.
Yep, you're welcome.
Do you have anything further to say, World of Peace? Should I get on to announcements?
Sure, you can go on to announcements.
All right. Well, this has been the 7th NixOS office hours. NixCon is coming up next week, October 25th and 26th in Brno, Czech Republic. Now is your last chance to get tickets to the conference if you haven't already. I will be there. A lot of other good people will be there. And unfortunately, the hack day is already sold out. If you're interested in being the 20 point 20.03 co-release manager, reach out to Samuel Leathers on IRC or GitHub or Twitter. I have posted some links into the Zoom group chat, and I'll post some information in IRC just after this. Twig.io is hiring full-time remote engineers to work on Nix and related ecosystem tools. If you're interested, please reach out to me. Our next edition of Office Hours is November 1st. Will again be 3 p.m. American New York time. However, there might be some time zone confusion, and I will also be in Paris at the time, so we'll get it as close as possible to that time. And if you would like to be a guest in the future, please complete the form that World of Peace is about to share in chat, I believe.
Yep, I will do that.
And that sums it up. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. And I will see you all hopefully in Brno and otherwise in a couple weeks.
I will note that I won't actually be present for NixCon. Just so if everyone's expecting to see me there, I will not be present, unfortunately.
All right. I'm still disappointed about that.
Just regarding Hack Day, we're trying to add a little bit more quota. Where I will get confirmation on Sunday about that.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
everyone.
See you all.
Day, evening, wherever.